Pam Bondi walked into that hearing expecting to project confidence, strength, and constitutional authority. But within seconds, the entire room realized something wasn't adding up. Because the moment Senator Alex Padilla began speaking, the mask slipped. What followed wasn't just a disagreement. It was a systematic unraveling of Bondi's credibility, her political tightrope walking, and the myth that she could serve as an independent attorney general. And if you think the first few minutes were tense, the next hour turned into one of the most revealing confrontations of the entire confirmation process.
And discuss a number of issues that are important to me, but I got to tell you, as I reflected on our conversation yesterday and as I've observed the hearing today, I continue to have significant reservations on your ability to function as a truly independent Attorney General for your friend. Let's say you keep referring to him, your friend, President-elect Trump. So I hope you can address some of these concerns through your responses to my questions here. Now, the first issue area is something that we didn't get a chance to touch on yesterday. So I actually want to follow up on some of Senator Durbin's questions from earlier about the 2020 election. And to be specific, on the day after the 2020 presidential general election, you traveled to Philadelphia to appear alongside President Trump's then attorney, Rudy Giuliani. And together, you falsely asserted that President Trump had, quote, won Pennsylvania in that election. Now, I want to be clear, at that moment, there were still at least 1 million ballots left to be counted in Pennsylvania. Of course, President Biden went on to win the state by more than 80,000 votes. But in the following days, even after the results were clear, you continued to double down on the big lie, promoting falsehoods about election fraud and cheating without offering any actual evidence. And I remember it clearly because I served as California Secretary of State at the time, and I invited anybody associated with the Trump campaign who was making these claims to come forward with evidence of irregularities in the election or massive voter fraud. 4 years later, I still have seen none. So I ask you today, do you have any evidence of election fraud or irregularities in the 2020 election?
So, First Senator.
Yes or no? It's a yes or no question.
First Senator.
Do you have evidence, yes or no?
First Senator. I'm so sorry about the fires to you and Senator Schiff and what you're going through in your states. I have to say that.
I appreciate
think
that.
all
My
of our,
clock is
I'll
ticking,
answer
and I
your
want to
question.
hear
All of our
your answer.
hearts go out to everyone in California for what you're facing right now. I'm glad you asked the question about Pennsylvania.
It's a yes or no question.
I was
Do
hoping
you have evidence,
someone
yes or
would.
no?
Senator, I was hoping you'd ask the question.
Do you have evidence, yes or no?
I traveled to Pennsylvania.
Do you have the evidence, yes
I traveled,
or no?
Senator, to Pennsylvania.
Okay. You're not answering my question. If you have no evidence to offer, let me ask you this. Will you now retract your previous statements that Trump won Pennsylvania in the 2020 election, yes or no?
Oh, Senator, I traveled to Pennsylvania, and let me tell you what I saw firsthand.
Yes or
no?
no?
I didn't talk about California because I was not in California. I talked about...
Yes or no? Last time I'm going to ask.
I talked about Pennsylvania because
Mr.
I
Chair,
was there.
I'm going to move on because she's clearly not answering my questions. And I want to
observe.
know, colleagues, for everybody, members of the committee and everybody watching, that the attorney who stood beside Mr. Giuliani was making very similar statements. And he has since been disbarred from multiple jurisdictions for making these false claims about the 2020 election in court. And like Mr. Giuliani, as you've noted today, you've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution just as an attorney. And now you're asking us to consider you to serve as the chief law enforcement officer in our country? So it's imperative, Ms. Bondi, that you subscribe to facts and evidence and not politically convenient conspiracy theories. Your job will be, your job will be to protect voters and election workers, not to undermine and dox them. Now, I know that earlier you agreed that Joe Biden is in fact president, but many of the president-elect's inner circle continue to spread the big lie about the 2020 election. Let me move on to a different topic.
Senator, you were speaking. May I speak? You
I
cut
want to
me
ask
off
you the
when I
next
was
question. You
speaking.
can speak, and I hope you answer, Ms. Bondi.
Well, I'd
Now,
like
when
to
we met
answer the previous
yesterday,
one, Senator.
when we met
You
yesterday,
pointed your finger at me and
you did
said you
not
were
seem to be
speaking.
familiar
Let me answer
with
my
the
question. I'm not going to be
citizenship
bullied by you,
clause, the
Senator
14th
Padilla.
Amendment of the United States of America, which was deeply disappointing.
I guess you
And I'm
didn't want to
hoping you're
hear
more
my
familiar
answer
with it
about
today
Pennsylvania.
after I gave an opportunity to study overnight. So can you tell me and this committee what the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment says?
Senator, I'm here to answer your questions. I'm not here to do your homework and study for you. If I am confirmed
No,
as
you're
Attorney
the one
General,
asking for a confirmation
hey,
vote,
you
ma'am.
cut me off. Can I please finish?
What does the 14th Amendment say?
Senator, the 14th Amendment, we all know, addresses birthright citizenship. I've been a state prosecutor. I've been a state AG. I look forward to, even given your remarks today, working with you and the people of California if I am confirmed as the 87th Attorney General of the United States of America. I didn't take your homework assignment. I'm sorry. I was preparing for today.
So on the 14th Amendment, now you've testified repeatedly to this committee that you will uphold the laws of this country and defend the Constitution of the United States. Do you believe birthright citizenship is the law of the land, and will you defend it regardless of a child born in the United States, regardless of their parents' immigration status?
Senator, I will study birthright citizenship. I would love to meet with you regarding
Ma'am, you're
birthright
asking us to
citizenship. Can I
continue
answer
to
the
serve as the
question?
Attorney General of the United States, and you still need to study the 14th Amendment of the Constitution? That is not helping me have more confidence in your ability to do this job. One other
Padilla didn't waste time. He opened with facts, not feelings, reminding everyone that the 34 convictions of the former president weren't accusations, but verdicts delivered by a jury of peers. And right away, he made it clear that his concern wasn't partisan. It was about independence, about trust, about whether the person sitting in front of him could truly separate personal loyalty from constitutional duty. Because during their private meeting the day before, Bondi repeatedly referred to the incoming president as her friend. And Padilla wasn't buying the idea that someone who speaks that casually about a powerful political ally could suddenly transform into an impartial guardian of justice. Not when the stakes were this high. Not when the country was still recovering from the wounds of an election warped by misinformation. But the calm tone didn't last long. Padilla went straight into the issue Bondi clearly hoped no one would revisit. Her trip to Pennsylvania the day after the 2020 election. He didn't sugarcoat it. She flew to Philadelphia before ballots were fully counted. She stood beside Rudy Giuliani. She publicly claimed victory in a state with over 1 million votes still uncounted. And she doubled down even after the results were certified. Padilla remembered, because he personally asked anyone pushing those claims to bring forward proof. For years later, he still hadn't seen a shred of evidence. So he asked Bondi the simplest question imaginable. Do you have evidence of election fraud? Yes or no? She didn't answer. She started with condolences for the California fires. She praised Padilla's state. She thanked him for the question. She explained where she traveled, why she traveled, how she felt traveling. But she didn't answer the question. So Padilla repeated it. Yes or no? Do you have evidence? And again, Bondi drifted into a prepared monologue about what she saw firsthand, but never once stated what that actually was. The hearing room grew quieter, the tension thicker, because audiences had seen this tactic before: avoid specifics, stretch time, redirect attention. But every second she dodged, Padilla's point became clearer. She had made sweeping public claims about fraud and victory, but when pressed under oath, she couldn't produce a single fact to defend them. Padilla didn't stop there. He reminded the committee and viewers that the attorney who stood next to Giuliani during those same briefings had since been disbarred for pushing the exact same baseless claims in court. He drew a straight line between the consequences for those who misled the public and the responsibility Bondi was now asking for. He wasn't just exposing a contradiction. He was exposing a pattern. And that's when Bondi made her boldest move. She tried to flip the script. She accused Padilla of misunderstanding the facts. She suggested his credibility was in question, not hers. But it fell flat, because Padilla wasn't arguing from speculation. He was arguing from certified results, audited ballots, court rulings, and the absence of evidence from Bondi's own camp. Her pivot wasn't strength. It was desperation disguised as confidence. But the confrontation was far from over. Next came the Constitution itself. Padilla shifted to the 14th Amendment, a foundational pillar of American citizenship, something every attorney general should understand backward and forward. Padilla asked her to explain the citizenship clause, a straightforward, foundational question. But instead of answering, Bondi brushed it off with a smirk, saying she wasn't there to do his homework. The hearing room froze. Even some of her supporters looked uneasy, an attorney general nominee refusing to explain one of the most litigated constitutional amendments, a would-be chief law enforcement officer dismissing a clarification of legal text as homework. Padilla made it clear this wasn't acceptable. Not for someone seeking to uphold the nation's laws. Not for someone asking for the power to interpret them. After additional pushing, Bondi finally muttered a vague answer about birthright citizenship, but it was shallow, incomplete, and clearly unprepared. Padilla stated the obvious. If she needed to study the Constitution the night before her confirmation hearing, how could she possibly claim readiness to lead the Justice Department? And then came the moment that would be replayed across social platforms for days. Padilla asked if she agreed with the statement that immigrants were poisoning the blood of the country. A yes or no question. And again, she refused to answer directly. She talked about her great-grandparents. She talked about Ellis Island. She talked about family history. She talked about America being a nation of immigrants. But she never addressed the core of the question. Padilla asked again, and again, and again. Finally, after being pressed with no escape left, she quietly said no. And while her denial mattered, the way she arrived at it mattered more. Because the hesitation revealed exactly what Padilla wanted the American public to see. Bondi was willing to sidestep even the most extreme rhetoric if it meant avoiding conflict with the political movement she aligned herself with. This wasn't independence. This was selective courage. Throughout the hearing, a pattern emerged, one impossible to ignore. Instead of giving clear answers, Bondi offered emotional detours, political talking points, and strategic vagueness. She attacked Padilla's questions, painted herself as a victim, and tried to reframe accountability as bullying. But Padilla wasn't playing that game. He reminded everyone that as Attorney General, Bondi's job wouldn't be to comfort political allies. It would be to protect election workers who faced harassment, to safeguard voters whose names and private data were doxed, to uphold the constitutional rights she refused to articulate. And when Bondi snapped back that she won't be bullied, it only made the contrast sharper. Padilla wasn't bullying her. He was holding her to the standard of the position she sought, a standard she appeared unwilling or unprepared to meet. As the hearing wrapped up, Bondi thanked the committee, but the tension in the room was clear. Padilla's final remark, "I can't wait for the second round," wasn't sarcasm. It was a warning. There were more questions, more contradictions, more evasions waiting to be unraveled, because Bondi's performance didn't just raise concerns. It raised alarms. Observers began questioning whether her role in past election narratives meant she couldn't separate herself from political loyalty. Online discussions speculated that her evasions weren't accidental, they were strategic. A way to avoid alienating a powerful base while appearing legally neutral. A balancing act that ultimately satisfied no one. Her supporters saw conviction. Her critics saw deflection. But neutral viewers saw something far more important. A nominee who talked about defending democracy, but dodged every opportunity to demonstrate it. And that's why this hearing struck such a nerve. It wasn't about one election. It was about whether the nation's highest law enforcement position could be trusted with someone who repeatedly refused to answer the most basic questions about facts, law, and truth. And no matter how many times she invoked her background, her travels, or her immigrant ancestry, the core issue remained the same. If an attorney general cannot clearly articulate constitutional principles, if an attorney general cannot unequivocally defend the sanctity of elections, if an attorney general cannot answer simple yes or no questions, then how can anyone believe she is prepared to uphold justice without fear or favor? That's the question Padilla left hanging in the air. And it's the question viewers haven't stopped asking since. That if you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure to hit the like button so more people can see what actually happened in that hearing. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Bondi's performance showed independence or exposed deeper issues? And don't forget to subscribe, because the next video dives into an even more explosive confrontation you won't want to miss.